Hi, my name is Martin and I'm a specialist technical coach and mentor for open formula drivers. In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about FP1 and FP2 from the perspective of the driver coach, of course. If you're interested in what my thoughts are, definitely keep watching. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I hope you're going well. Let's kick off with the conditions in the first instance, because I was quite shocked and surprised how much grip there was out there. Like, it was good conditions, dry, obviously, good temperature, 24 degrees. And I think the cars were just absolutely on it straight away, particularly through the S's. Now, about halfway through the session, Max was able to take the first part, that's the first left, right, and even the next part of that left absolutely flat as I was watching his throttle trace. So that's Copps, Maggots, Beckett's, and obviously not Chapel, just the one before that. And so if there's that much grip out there this early on, this is where my curiosity is starting to rumble, and I'm starting to think, well, there's so much full throttle time. Where are going to be the opportunities this weekend? Where are the opportunities for lap time? Because you start to think now, like, all the cars are flat through these corners. They've all got heaps of grip. So what are you going to do therefore to be able to make the difference? Let me give you an insight into some of the things I'm thinking. Firstly, you want to trim a little bit of wing off. If you've got an excess of grip and everything's like comfortably flat and we've got soft compounds here and it's dry and whatever, and I'll talk about the rain in a second, then you want to just dial off some wing and try to get a little bit more top speed. That's your first check. Second check, you want to be starting to play around with lines. Again, be curious out on the racetrack. I'm going to talk to the tight line at turns 3 and 4, which I'd be recommending at this point as well. But just generally play with your lines. See if there's opportunity to shorten the length of the whole track. That is, drive tight lines in certain places as well. And secondly, just play with your braking setup. Find the braking opportunities and make sure you're maximizing all of that available grip. We jumped on board with a few drivers. I was disappointed to not see them push brake balance forwards or backwards and optimize for braking capacity when the steering wheel is straight, and then adjust for that when the steering wheel is turned or when downforce is significant or not significant. Optimize that braking setup with engine braking, brake balance, brake migration, brake shape, and so on. So I think those are the opportunities out there, just given how much grip is available to everyone at the moment. Now, look, I mentioned in the live stream how important I think the wind direction is going to be throughout this weekend as well, because again, they're flying through the air at crazy speeds with a lot of grip. It's going to be very sensitive to the wind. You're going to have to keep on top of that. I'll jump over to the whiteboard and show you the wind direction that we had in FP1, and it was coming across the track, giving a tailwind into the braking of turn 3. So it was coming actually from the southeast. This track map is not north orientated, so it's coming across that way. And the problems were therefore breaking down into turn 3. We saw Lance Stroll become a victim of that, but not too many other drivers struggled with the rear instability. I'll just show you guys what that looked like now. So pretty much like this, just as Lance turns in, the whole car just goes totally afloat and basically just overtakes itself. So that's what you're looking at. That's the sort of thing that can happen with the wind. There's not much you can do like in order to solve for that. As I'm just thinking out loud, you've just got to really go slower, ask less of the rear tires. If you can put brake balance forward, of course, do that. But just don't combine as much is probably the biggest thing. Combine meaning brake and turn at the same time. That's the best way to load up the rear, and then that sort of thing you're susceptible to. Yeah, just drive tight lines, steer less, separate your elements a little bit more. Hopefully they don't have that in the race. That would be pretty annoying. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on the wind direction throughout the weekend as well. Now, for me, the biggest story of FP1 was the turn 3 and turn 4 combination. I spoke about this in the live stream as well. And I said, what you're trying to do essentially is solve for slow speed understeer. Remember, these cars, right, the balance shift changes at different speeds and different downforce levels. In the low end, when speed is, say, 100 kilometers, maybe 110 or less, cars are very clumsy. They're very understeery. The front does not want to turn into slow speed corners. The downforce is out of the car. It's not as significant as in the top end. Now, in the top end, in the high speed, the 250s, the 200s and so on, the balance actually shifts towards oversteer. That's just the characteristic of the regulation set that we have at this point in time. So what you need to do is try to increase the front grip in the slow speed and try to back off the front grip in the high speed. And therein lies your whole flexi wing situation. A wing that backs off in the high speed gives you a little bit more top end and gives you a better balance in the high speed, and then pops back up in the low speed, able to take these corners. But fundamentally, you know, Leopard can't change its spots, and that's what we're dealing with in the 2025 cars. So the solution is the tight line. Again, regular viewers of the channel will know about the tight line between turn 3 and turn 4. That's your play, is just don't ask so much of the front tires to be able to turn in from the other side of the world into turn 4. No, just keep it nice and tight. Give the car less work to do to be able to get into turn 4. I'll draw it out for you guys on the whiteboard now, and we'll have a look at the problem and the solution. Okay, so I've just drawn like what turns 3 and 4 might look like. I'll just draw in red like a typical racing line. And this is the problem here, is when the drivers want to get to find this piece of track over here and then turn in from that position, you're never going to make it in. You're asking so much from the car to be able to change direction at slow speed and cover this big track width that we have across here. So the tight line says you're not going to find that entry position on the far right hand side. You're going to do all the normal stuff. But from here, you're just more or less just going to dive in. You save all of this extra meters. You put the front tires through less load and less work, get to the apex sooner, and your exit speed's not really compromised. Why? Because our red line can't actually get into the corner from that position anyway. So there's no losses, and it's the solution to all of the slow speed understeer problems. So it was interesting to hear, therefore, Max Verstappen's radio message about halfway through the session. I'll bring it up on the screen in front of you now, and I'll read it out. And Max says as follows: I don't know, it just doesn't turn at the low speed. And then in the high speed, it's either big snaps, and then he stops talking and he goes, pile of understeer. So Max generally doesn't have a big issue with a high speed oversteer. He can deal with that. What he hates is the slow speed understeer. This is surprising for me because not only is this a trait of the Red Bull, but more broadly speaking, it's a trait of the era and reg of the cars. For Max to say, I don't know, it just doesn't turn at the low speed, and then at the high speed, it's either big snaps. Like, this is nothing new in this regulation set or the Red Bull that he's been driving in 24 and 25. And now with Max, we can start to talk about his driving style. It is unfortunately the red line to use all of the available track width and carry speed into the corner, which I think doesn't serve him that well. Now we spoke about Lewis as well. Again, if you're following the channel, you'll know the story. Lewis is typically our tight line driver. I haven't seen it that much this year in the opportunities that he could have driven a tight line. You'll have to refer back to the Chinese videos and refer back to the Spain videos, Spain turn 12 and China turn 1. Lewis was not doing tight lines, but here we are, Silverstone, and he's pulled out some tight lines again. Let's have a look at them together now. So you'll see there just the way the two cars go into the corner. This is Lewis following George in practice, and I'll show you guys another slow-mo here. At this point here, that entry position from Lewis, and I'll just go back and pause it. That earlier entry position, you should be able to see George trying to sweep in from further left, carry speed. And Lewis is that car width inside, getting to the apex earlier. It's also helpful to stay out of the dirty area as well. Now, this angle doesn't necessarily give us the best shot at who's using how much track width on the entry into the next corner, which is very important, turn 4. But I suspect that, again, George is using a little bit more. And you can actually see Lewis meeting with that apex if you just zoom in. It'll be hard for you to see from this angle. But I think Lewis meets with the, yeah, you can see just even from this shot, Lewis meets with the actual corner curb a little bit better. So Lewis is playing the tight lines early on in FP1. That's something to keep an eye out for as the weekend unfolds as well. I think in those that turn 3 and 4, that's definitely the play. And so good to see Lewis of old demonstrating the tight line in practice 1. Now I'll show you guys a bad example. Was Paul Aaron out at turn 3? Let's have a look at that now. This is what bad looks like because he's going all the way to the very right, and you see that little snap on the exit as well. Have a look in slow-mo. All the way out to the very right, over to the moon, and then trying to get the thing to do a direction change at that slow speed is not helpful. That's the reason why the speed drops out of the car. He can't keep minimum speed active. And then when he goes for the throttle, Stab was saying, no, mate, I haven't got any speed or downforce to actually give you grip on the exit. The tight line also is a solution for Paul Aaron as well. Now, Jensen Button, to his credit, picked this up in commentary. So good job, Jensen. I'm actually happy to hear that. Let's have a listen to what Jensen said when he was watching Lewis and George, as per the video I showed you before.
He looks a lot stronger through that section. Lewis is able to get the car turned a lot, take a tighter line through there, whereas George seems to have to use all the track.
George seems to have to use all the track, and Lewis is able to take a tighter line into that corner. I would just ever so slightly tinker with what Jensen's saying. It's not that Lewis is able to. George is also able to. but he's choosing not to. Now, look, I'll also, if you guys saw the live stream yesterday, I brought up this issue with George's pole lap, and I'll show it to you guys again. Again, this was turn 3 and turn 4, the entry to turn 4. George searching for that far right piece of entry position and then wants to turn in from there to carry the most speed into the corner and open up the entry. Unfortunately, the Mercedes does not make it into the apex from that. So essentially, the problem with it is that you're asking the car to cover too much ground at slow speed and change direction. You're opening up the corner, going to the right, and then you want to turn in. The cars don't like that. So the advantage of the tight line is that it's straight for a period, and then you can just go in. If I show you guys on the whiteboard just quickly again, the advantage with the green line is that it's actually straight for a period, and it's more obedient when you go and turn it into that left-hander. Now, the other notable piece of track in FP1 was the Vale final chicane. 3 topics on the docket with regards to the Vale final chicane. The first is the braking into that chicane. There's a little bit of a crest, which means the car goes over a little hill and then starts going downhill on braking into Vale. When a car goes over a crest, the rear gets a little bit light, so there's the potential for rear instability. All you need to do is push the brake balance forward a few clicks into braking into the Vale chicane. That's the first issue. I'll show you guys the only entry instability that I saw on board one of the Hasses. I think it was Ollie Behrman, but I'll bring it up now and we'll have a look together. So there you go. It was just that little wobble under braking. I'll slow it down. As he turns in, whoop, the back lets go and he has to just open the steering for a fraction of a second. Now, like I said, this was pretty good conditions. The cars have got so much downforce and grip. That's as bad as we saw. But like in the wet, for example, that could be, something that's more exaggerated and you'll have to put the brake balance a little bit further to the front. That's an insight into the problem in that corner if there's not as much grip as there was out there today. Now, the second problem with the Vale chicane is using the entry curb and not using the exit curb. Remember, it's a chicane at the end of the day. So the 7 technical corners, chicanes is one of them. You've got a technique for each of the 7 technical corners. And with chicanes, the key is the first entry curb. Again, regular viewers of the channel will know this. We spoke about this in the live stream. Connecting in with the unloaded inside front in the first entry curb is key, and missing the second part because you're just focused on straight line traction, keeping the car nice and settled on the exit, going for the throttle, opening the steering wheel, and away you go. So I'll show you what Leclerc did or didn't do, and that was the reason why he got that Ferrari unsettled and upset on the exit, was because he missed the first part and went over the second part. So this is the reason why we don't touch the exit curb. I'll show you guys the clip now. Here it is here. So Charles has missed the first part and found himself on the second part, and that's where all the dramas have unfolded. Now, if you haven't got the discerning eye, you'll look at it and be like, oh, he touched the curb on the exit, but wind back a few steps. He's missed his entry curb, which I always say is the most important thing. What you want to do at this point, Charles, give it a nice big armful of lock to unload this left front tire, connect that in with the entry curb. Mate, your exit's all good after that. It's not a problem. So Charles misses this part. The steering comes on too late for me, and he's missed his apex here. Now he's got understeer in the middle of the chicane trying to make the corner. Now he's found himself on this exit curb, which has unsettled the Ferrari and given it the traction problems thereafter. So I hope that makes sense. Our chicane rules are still holding true as at July 2025 now. Now, the third and final issue was I spoke about safety car restarts in the live stream yesterday as well. And we said, if you're the lead driver, where do you want to kick this race off from? Do you want to kick it off from the exit of Stowe, or do you want to kick it off from the exit of the final chicane? And we all agreed, everyone in the chat, myself as well, we said, if you go for it on the exit of the final chicane, from slow speed, when the downforce is not significant on the cold tires, there's the potential for you to get a little bit of exit oversteer and not get the run you want down the pitch straight. Bang, you're going to be under attack down into the first braking in turn 3. So have a look at this clip from Pierre Gasly. It's exactly that. So we were bang on in the live stream. You need to do your restart from the exit of Stowe corner, turn 15. So here it is here. This is Pierre just going nice and slow. He's about to open his lap. He thinks like, all good, tires are good, whatever. And now he goes for the throttle, and this is what can happen. And exactly what we said in the live stream. So good job, everyone who came and agreed and spotted this as well. I think that's the problem with kicking off the race out of the Vale chicane if you're the leader. If you are the leader, do not kick the race off out of the Vale chicane. Kick it off just through the exit of Stowe, brake nice and hard into the Vale chicane, carry the speed, carry the downforce, get the temperature through the Vale chicane, and then, you know, start to open the race down the pitch straight from there. I think your chances of messing it up as the leader on the restart are less. Now, I just want to touch on the weather, because you guys heard me at the start of the video say, no, take some downforce off because there's so much full throttle time. And a lot of you guys are going to be thinking, well, what happens if it starts to rain, Martin? Maybe do you want to keep that downforce on and do like a wet setup? No, I don't think so. This championship has been characterized by qualifying. That's the first thing. So if you can qualify in front, get in front, aero wash cars behind, you're good. Now, if it's raining, again, clean air is your friend. You want to see where you're going. You want to have just that clarity. And still, if it's intermediate, I also said like intermediate is as near as makes no difference dry for these cars. They've got so much downforce. They're going to be taking dry lines in the intermediate condition. When that intermediate goes across to full wet, now we're starting to talk about, you know, different lines, and yeah, maybe at the right end of the full wet or intermediate spectrum, right at the end of, close to full wet. That's what I'm saying. Okay, maybe at that point you want to put on some downforce, but you're going to have to pay for that. You're going to have to take a qualifying penalty. And what happens if it dries up at some point in the track? What happens if it dries up, at some point in the race? You're now sitting duck. So even if it's early rain and then dry, or dry and then rain, like I just feel like the chances of success are better if you trim the downforce off, take pole, or out qualify where you were meant to out qualify, control the race from that point onwards, make it difficult for cars to follow, difficult for cars to pass. Remember, you've got top speed in hand. And I just think that's the way the teams and drivers should be running this race. Now, look, I think Ferrari made this mistake in Melbourne, going for the wet setup, compromising the top speed, getting out qualified ridiculously, nowhere on Sunday. Like the whole thing just falls apart, I think. So the whole wet setup theory, at this year at least, I'm not buying into it. I'm going for top speed. I'm going for ultimate overall one lap performance. Now, I want to talk about Arvin Lindblad's radio message and response. I thought, again, it was a missed opportunity for a rookie to try to dig himself out of trouble. Regular viewers of the channel will know that the rookies have been complaining with braking this year, particularly Kimi Antonelli, coming on the radio saying, I'm locking brakes, what do I do? And Bono saying, yeah, we'll have a solution for you. Don't worry, we'll sort it out. That's not what you're looking for with a rookie. You want them to play with the tools, problem solve on their own, be curious, explore the track, change the brake balance, change the brake migration, change the engine braking, and just, if they can, try to dig themselves out of trouble. Why? Because it's the quickest solution. Rather than phoning a race engineer, they're looking at the data, they go to a performance engineer, come back to you with a solution. I think it's the quickest solution, and it's probably going to be more often than not the correct solution if you can diagnose it correctly. So now Arvin Lindblad comes on the radio very early on in FP1, guys. I'm front locking at low speed. We just spoke about low speed with these cars. Arvin, mate, there's no downforce. The cars are clumsy. They don't turn. Front locking at low speed is very normal for these cars. They're not that capable in the slow speed. Their capability comes when the speed and downforce piles on, and you can do what you want with the Formula One car at that speed. So front locking at slow speed, he complains about that on about 13 minutes into the session, like it's a car issue. Now, the radio message from the race engineer back was, okay, understood. I think that was a missed opportunity, because what should have been said from the race engineer back to the rookie driver was, okay, Arvin, I get it. What are you going to do about it? Arvin would be like, well, I don't know. Okay, well, maybe you want to try something. What are you going to do? The first thing you can do is obviously don't push the brakes so hard, be more progressive. If that's not working, maybe it's tire temperature, get your tires in the right window. Maybe the track's not cleaned up in the first 10 minutes of FP1, just relax a little bit. Maybe it's because you're on the hard compound tire. Then if all those things, like, you switch tires, the track cleans up, you're a little bit softer with your input, and you've still got front locking, play with your tools, play with your brake balance. It's not necessary to phone the race engineer at this point. And I think that sets a bad precedent for a rookie like Arvin, because anytime he has an issue, he's going to complain, and then you've got to try and find a solution for him. And it's just rubbish. You need to be able to just, okay, Arvin, what are you going to do about it? Let his mind wander. This is the perfect opportunity in FP1 with nothing to lose, all to gain, to just play with the few tools, play with a few things, or let the track clean up, or try a different line and just let him learn on his own. I think we've lost that now massively in Formula One. And hopefully through this channel, we're trying to bring that back to see better quality driving and more often. Now, just finally, Max's understeer issues into turn 3 and 4. Again, we spoke about his radio message and the cars of this generation. It didn't want to turn into turn 3. He'd obviously overheated the fronts. And then, I don't know, I'll show you guys the clip. You guys let me know what you think first, but Anthony's take on it, I think, was completely wrong. I'll show you guys the clip now. So the car doesn't turn into turn 3. And then I feel like Max just completely destroys the front tires by like holding the brakes and turning at the same time. So have a look at this. Doesn't turn into turn 3. I think Max came on the radio and said unbelievable or something like that. So he's obviously frustrated. You can see that right front is heavily, heavily worn. And now I think what Max does is turn, brake, accelerate, turn even more, and just try to like destroy the tires. Now I think Anthony Davidson's bad take here was he goes, wow, that's so unusual. I've never seen a car like lock up into turn 4. Words to this effect. Never seen a car that had understeer and then oversteer. That's so weird. Well, Anthony, you don't know Max very well. Max is saying, well, if I can take you guys into Max's head, Max is saying, well, front tires, if you don't want to turn into the corner and you're overheating, I'm just going to burn you, right? You guys are useless to me. So I'm just going to like hold on the brakes, hold on the throttle, crank the steering lock and just burn the front tires, because that's Max's frustration. It's the equivalent to a tennis player just smacking the ball out of the court in frustration. It's not a bad shot from the tennis player. Like he's just had enough and, smacked the ball into the crowd. That's what Max is doing. That's Max Verstappen smacking a ball into the crowd. He's just holding on to everything, combining everything to just burn the front tires, because he's like, well, if you guys want to overheat, then have this. So I thought that was funny and cool, and also shows from Anthony's side. Like we've seen this before in Bahrain. I don't know if you guys have come across this clip on the socials. It was floating around Instagram, TikTok, X. In Bahrain, the same thing. It wouldn't turn into the downhill, like I want to say turn 8, I think it is. And on the exit, Max just buried the throttle and did a massive burnout because out of frustration. Like, again, if the rears don't want to grip, Max is just like going to burn them. So it's just like Max doesn't want to be fighting for P10 or P9. Like Max is here to win, or otherwise he's just going to like, yeah, he's definitely frustrated in that car. All right, quick check of the FP1 results. Hamilton's top speed is alarming at this point. 329, alarming in a good way. 329, which is, Jesus, like 100 kilometers more than the next person, as near as it makes no difference. I'm not sure if you had a slipstream. Given Leclerc's top speed at 320, it would suggest, yes, Lewis did get a decent tow there. But then the sector's not that impressive for that top speed either. He's not purple in any of the sectors. So that's strange. Anyway, I'm not sure if he got a tow or not, but goes back to what I'm saying, right? Top speed is your friend when there's so much full throttle time. This is helpful. This is what you want. Maybe he's just trying a lower downforce setup, or maybe this was a mega slipstream down the back straight. I'm not sure at this stage. Sorry. And again, I think this is taking away from McLaren's advantage. Remember, McLaren's advantage is in long corners, their front grip. And just given that there's so much grip on the track anyway, to have this extra front grip, McLaren want to be pretty much doing what I'm saying. Like, we don't need the grip anymore. We actually need the top speed at this point. Other than that, like all the usual stuff, the V-carbs are up there. Again, Mercedes was struggling in these warmer temperatures. I don't particularly see anything else insightful other than the Ferrari, its top speed, and McLaren's advantage being handcuffed a little bit. Now, if it's raining or wet come Sunday, I think McLaren's advantage comes back again. The front grip is exactly what you want in the wet weather. Now, just before we get on to FP2, I did want to talk about those two spins that we saw at Copse Corner. So we saw Pierre Gasly on the exit of Copse do a full 360, and then we saw Gabby Bortoleto do even more than that. Look, I don't think it's the drivers to blame at that point. I just think it's, if anything, it's a reflection of the regulation set that we're in at the moment. The fact that these cars are so stiff, so low, so heavy, and just the tires are so big and they can just spin like that when the floor touches the ground, or that whole ground effect area gets unsettled. We're running the cars super close to the ground here in Silverstone this weekend. So yeah, I just thought it was a bit of a shame that F1 has come to this. You know, the cars can't ride curbs, be that entry curbs or exit curbs. Yeah, we spoke about this at length in Imola as well with the entry curb, and the drivers not having the confidence to be able to get onto the entry curb in the chicanes. in this particular case, it's the exit curb at Copse, just throwing the cars around. Like I said, I think it's a shame. Like, have we gone away from F1 cars that they can't ride curbs at this point? Like, maybe a conversation for another day. I just thought like it goes to show just how fragile that line is between heaps of grip and then no grip at all. Just as we jump over to FP2 now, Max clarifying, saying that now I've got understeer in the high speed as well. So that's understeering both now, the low speed and the high speed for Max Verstappen. So there's going to be a bit of head scratching overnight. We did get an aerial shot of his line into turn 3 and turn 4 that we spoke about in FP1. I'll show you guys that now. So here's Max coming into turn 3, the right-hander, and the problem that I think he's having is this position here, finding this entry. He doesn't quite make it to the curb, but he does make an effort to get further across to the right as much as possible. And the issue that you see is that it doesn't meet with the apex from there. And that's where I think that, you know, there's opportunities for Max to drive the tight line. Again, asking a lot from the right front to be able to change direction from slow speed and get into this corner. Let me show you guys how it's done in the hands of Lewis Hamilton. So I was super excited to get an example of what good looks like so I could show you in the hands of Lewis Hamilton, turn 3 and 4. I'll bring that up for you guys now. So here we go, coming out of 3 and into 4. You'll notice Lewis doesn't use anywhere near all of the available track on entry. Gets a lovely run through here. Meets with the apex beautifully. Car rotates beautifully. It's more compliant. And then no traction issues on the exit as well because, you know, everything's fairly settled. So I must say that I saw both of the Ferrari drivers taking this tight line approach into turn 4. I think that in combination with, you know, there was a lot of talk about them running less downforce as well. The commentators are starting to pick up on that as well. I think a combination of the tight lines and the Ferrari aero package that they've brought here, helping bring those guys to the top of the timesheets in FP1 and at the sharp end in FP2 as well. FP2 results are on the screen in front of you. I think at this point, it's going to be important for Oscar Piastri to resolve for this and try to get ahead in front of these Ferraris. Remember, he's fighting for the World Championship, damage limitation settings in the best car. It needs to be first or second for Oscar. You can't have it like, if this is the qualifying or race result, it's not a great result. But Oscar, I think he'll just look to at least try to get in front of the Ferraris, and they can cause some trouble here this weekend. I think this is proving to be the case. If I do get a chance to jump over the telemetry, we'll have a quick look together and just see what's going on between the McLaren drivers. Verstappen there in P5, if he can resolve for that understeer, I think he will take a step forward again tomorrow as well. And if it's raining, I think Max will go great as well, just because he knows where the grip is when it starts to rain off that rubber. I'm going to compare FP1 best laps because it was Norris's 26.9 against Piastri's 27.0. And even though they were close, just want to potentially get an insight into it. So the final chicane is where Oscar lost most of the time. And he also lost a bit in the corner that we're talking about, that we've been talking about so far, right? The whole 3 and 4 sequence as well. Oscar lost a fair chunk of time there as well. So Lando going in early into that corner, I think that's important as well, going in early into turn 4. You see that delta spike for Lando in his favor, like all on the entry, and then it comes back in Oscar's favor. It's still worth points to Lando as well. And then in the final chicane, Lando swallows him by 1.5 tenths there as well. Oscar pretty quick in the high speed. So this is the S's. So that's where Oscar's finding some delta there as well. He's able to keep his foot flat in places where Lando is not. You'll see a lift here. This is Copse, for example. So Piastri able to keep his foot flat there. And Lando probably would have checked all this in FP2 and then, you know, worked out what's going on. But yeah, I thought I'd just give you a little bit of an insight. And look, guys, my biggest insight is actually the lap time seems to be in the slow speed corners this weekend. So it's the turn 3 and turn 4 situation, turn 6 and turn 7 situation as well. And the final chicane, braking, who can brake nice and late into 16, grab the entry curb there, and then get good traction through 17 as well. Thanks guys for watching. If you could do me a favor, leave me a comment on your way out. If you had a thought, a question, or you learned something from this video, drop it in the comment section. It definitely helps the channel moving forward. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.